Hey, welcome to the Agency Side Podcast. My name is Justin Levinson. I am your host. I'm here today with Sam Cryer, who is the CEO, founder of Intermission Films, a wonderful creative agency, specializes in AV design. And I'm so excited to hear your story, Sam. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah. Well, just to get into it, I know I just gave a really quick pitch, but maybe you can tell the viewers exactly what you guys do at Intermission.
We're a creative agency that specializes in entertainment, specifically film and series. We get to have fun with all the big films, series, an early development of those. So we work in trailers, TV spots, socials, key art, creative content, kind of spinning off ideas from the great work that other people are making almost in some ways, and working out how to package it and how to boil down, say, 2 hours into 2 minutes or even sometimes 20 seconds. It's like we get these novels and we create haikus out of them.
It's an interesting analogy. I haven't heard that one before, but there's certainly an art to what you guys are doing there. How'd you get into this particular space?
How did I get into it? Well, I was initially, I studied kind of English and theatre, and then and then I was running club nights. And then my dad was like, "Are you going to get a proper job?" And proper job meant that I wanted to go into film because essentially I always loved films growing up. I was the kid that always wanted to go early and watch all the trailers. I grew up in a small town, and you kind of got a choice. You can either hang in the park drinking booze the whole time, or you can slip into the cinema and watch films. So I did that. And so I and also, get into the VHS shops and getting the first ones out and and all that kind of stuff. So film was kind of my love. Theatre was a lot easier to get into in the UK, especially. This was all before mobile phones, and I sound old, but you could pick up a phone and make a film. And then, I was always about audiences, and I think that film always talks to a wide audience. So I got a job as a runner, worked in commercial production initially. I was always I had a choice actually at the beginning, because there was a really cool video brand which I loved, which was called Tartan, that released all the kind of Southeast Asian kind of horrors, and they also released La Haine and things like that, all these great, but they were paying nothing. So whereas running in commercials was a lot more. I was lucky to work with some really great directors, did that for a while, was on set and those kind of things. And then I left there because it was insane, the hours they expected you to work. So I was I actually did a shoot and kind of went a bit AWOL, but that's another story. So, and I learned the directors are really strong, and the British commercials were at that point, it was early 2000s were really, really great. There was Glaze was making stuff, and I worked for a guy called Frank Budgeon, and he was creating kind of really great pieces of almost art in some ways. And then I got a job, and then I was a runner, and then someone went to me, "Do you like music, and can you write?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And they gave me a test as a copywriter. And the guy that ran the company was a guy called Chris Fowler. And Chris Fowler and Jim, and they were the first people in the UK to set up an entertainment creative agency. And that was, they'd set it up 20 years almost before I was there. And I remember Chris saying, "Yeah, you get into the arse end of the industry." And I was like, "I don't care, it's the industry." So it's kind of, and hey, I get to watch films, and I get to write and watch films. And then you're asking me to choose the music, and that's great. And then you're going to give me a film, and then you're going to ask me to work with an editor to, I know how much effort goes into films. It's like years and years, they're babies. And I was, a few years out of uni, and they were giving me this film to essentially play around with and write and recreate in some ways. So I was like, this is cool. And I was also really lucky because we had the Film Channel 4 account then, and I did launch some big shows. I actually I was at the beginning of Big Brother and things like that. And it was like, you get these briefs and you're like, this is kind of crazy, and then you suddenly see, and then you start seeing your work. I remember kind of coming up. I guess I was a bit impatient when I was younger, probably still am. And they had these creative meetings, and sometimes they just go on for ages and ages and ages. I'd be just like, look, this is the idea. Just do this idea. Go with this idea, which must have been really irritating for the more senior people in there, because this young kid had come in. And then, sorry, I'm going a bit of a ramble. So I was there for a while. And there was other great shows that we got to work on, and good films. And I was there for kind of like probably a couple of years. And then there was another company called Empire. They were setting up an AV department, and they needed a copywriter, and they'd never had a copywriter in there before. So I kind of went in there actually, I'm sorry, I've got to go back to CP, because the team of copywriters we had there were great. They were pretty, they were just a really good bunch of people, and all of them are kind of still went on to kind of bigger and better things in the industry. Actually, all of them went to LA, and they all so it was great learning from, there was Paul Noble, who sadly passed away last year. He went on to kind of Sony International. Mark LaFontaine, who's kind of like a Buddha, and a guy called Alan Island. And they all kind of took me under their wings slightly as well. And then there was also Chris, who was a novelist as well, and just a great guy who had amazing stories about Soho. And in those days, Soho was the heart of the UK film industry. You had all these film stars. I went there the first day. I think it was like first week, Ewan McGregor came to watch the football there. And I was like, this is pretty, And I'd grown up with, train spotting was another reason I wanted to get into the advertising, the kind of creative advertising side of this. So went to Empire, worked there for a while. So, I was at the beginning of their AV department, kind of tried to join the print department with the AV department through writing. And I think good writing is always about positioning and strategy, and just kind of, it's more than just a tagline. It's more than just, and that was good. I was there about 6 years. Then left there and went freelance. I was like, I'm going freelance. I'm going to write this script that I've had brewing for ages. I'm going to do all these kind of like all this other stuff that I had planned, and then create or establish. I don't know whether this means anything to any of these people listening, by the way, all these names just dropping. So
I think we do have a bit of a cult following in theatrical marketing.
Fine.
And influencer and in experiential. So I think, I know a lot of the names that you're actually mentioning. So
I'm just reading random names, and I'm like,
anyway. I think it will resonate with certainly with some folks. And if they don't know, they should look these folks up on LinkedIn, because I definitely know some of them are legends in the industry.
So Create Advertising was setting up a London office, and they came to me and they were like, sorry, I'll give you the full backstory of my CV.
No, that's great.
Create Advertising set up a London office, and I was like, I'm not interested. And then I was like, actually, it's quite interesting, because what I can learn is everything I've learned in Europe and, in England, and then the kind of LA way. And that was quite, so I learned the different way of working, which is it is quite different. There is a kind of different kind of, so I was like, look, and they were very kind of, this is the way we work, this is the way we do things. I was like, yeah, that's great. But you're also hiring British talent, so they work in a slightly different way. So I think what you need to do is kind of meet somewhere in the middle. And beforehand they were very beholden to the LA office, and kind of the CD there and all this kind of stuff. And you got to have an identity over here. You've got to stand for something over here. So did that for a while, about a year and a half, kind of gave them a good foundation, left there, and again was planning to write my script. And then clients were kind of saying, can you do some bits? And I was doing bits and bobs, and then one thing led to another. An editor I loved working with became free. I bumped into some people in Cannes who had a post house. It happened to be at the end of my street. And then I was like, look, if I'm starting this, then I know what I'm like. If I start something, then it's just going to start snowballing and start kind of rolling and start becoming bigger. And so it's great it's the end of my street, because I can get home quite easily. Also, it was also in East London as well. And when I first moved to London, I'd moved to East London. I'd seen that area change. I'd seen that, and everyone else was in Soho. And I was like, no, I want to be in East London. One of the reasons as well was that I love working with filmmakers, and I also love working with up and coming filmmakers. And I think I got to a point with working in certain, certain agencies where you weren't allowed to work with them because of budget restraints or stuff like that. I was like, look, there is a way that I think there's a way you can balance this, and you can tend the ecosystem and look after the ecosystem of the people that are coming up, but equally, the people that essentially the people that pay the bills in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that works in film, well, I know that directors certainly work that way. They sometimes do one for themselves and one for the studios or something like that. But I think that's kind of the ethos that I had as well, and kind of developing new talent, bringing new people on, trying to get people that weren't just always from, I mean, we met, obviously this doesn't always count anymore, but not just people from my industry or specifically from trailers. And you have to do that. And you had to do that in the UK as well, because we don't have, it's not like LA where, there's loads of shops doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We have great editors here. We have great designers here, but they might not be working in this world. They might not even know this world existed like I did. I didn't know this world existed. I just thought when someone first, as I said, first came up and said, can you write, do you want to do this? I'm like, wow, I didn't realize there were people that actually paid to do this. I thought this was part of the studios or someone like that would do it.
Were you nervous when you first, I mean, it sounds like it was just like cosmic, and it just, one thing just happened after another that sort of led you to where you are. But, were you sort of nervous about starting your own creative agency? Did you ever like have any second thoughts about it, or worried if it was going to be something that would continue to be fruitful, or what were your thoughts at that time?
I didn't have any second thoughts because I had no other options in some ways. I'm not the best employee sometimes, and I think it took me a while to realize that. I'm good in I'm good in short bursts. I'm good in that way. But I think that to sit in a structure sometimes was quite hard for me. And I'm naturally, I ping around a lot. So I need to surround myself sometimes with people that kind of take those pings and kind of organize them a bit better. Was I nervous? No, I wasn't, to be honest with you, because I had nothing to really, frankly, lose. And I'd done stuff like, if you've done, I know it sounds stupid, if you've done club nights or stuff like that, that sometimes you're going to make a loss, and that sometimes you're going to but you're doing something you love, your own boss, you have to set up with a series of, I think, sounds over the top, but a slight belief system. There's a reason that you're doing it, or there's a reason that you think this is a better way of doing it. Now, I'm not saying that everyone else is wrong. I'm just saying that for me personally, there was another way of doing it, and that was something which I wanted to do. Now, whether if I'd had kids at that stage, it might have been different. But at that point, I could just go, right, okay. And the big thing of the film industry is everyone's, I shouldn't say this outright, but especially if you're working in the independent sector, which is where I started, people aren't the quickest payers.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, done all this work, but I haven't been paid for X amount. So, there were times when, in the early days, I put editors, I paid editors on my credit card pretty much, I was.
Yeah.
So, but that's, you've got to back yourself to a degree, and you've got to have that, that belief in that, that what you're doing is right, and that it's going to be successful. My actual bigger concern, and this sounds weird, is I was like, I've started this. I don't know how the fuck I'm. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I'm not. I don't know how I'm going to get off.
Yeah.
If I want to get out at some point, if I want to go and do these kind of, I never intended to do advertising. I was like, I want to make art. I want to make create. I want to be a creator. I want to be a proper creative. I want to make, I want to make films. I want to write. I want to make,
Yeah.
The fact is that actually 2 minutes suits my attention. But unfortunately, you get to know it. But that's kind of what I was more worried about. I was like, is this going to be a distraction from actually achieving what I want to do? Maybe ultimately.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I obviously am in the creative recruitment world, and I do love that very much. But as I've pointed out in many conversations, I'm a musician, and I think my dream has always sort of been to create music for like film and TV and all that other stuff. And I had a similar perspective when I started the business, was like kind of the same kind of thing. It's like, how do I get out? Like, how do I, it was sort of a tool to give us stability in order to be more creative and have more free time, was sort of my calculus. I actually really do love recruiting and connecting people. I always thought, I believe that is a superpower that I always had, even younger. If friends of mine from high school know, I could circle with the nerds, the theater geeks, the jocks. I could really be a chameleon. And I feel like it wasn't because I was acting like, not authentically. It was just sort of a natural, just a natural skill I had. So I know I'm taking the conversation away, but I totally can understand. And I know.
Yeah, I think that ability to connect is so important. It's what we do. I mean, there's several things. Anyone creative has to have a connection. You have to connect with your audience. Yeah. For me, the biggest thing is how do you connect with an audience, and then also connection. You've got to connect with the team to create that, to make that creative. You've got a series of. Then how do you connect with the? So it's all about the emotional connection that you have to people and anything you make. There has to be an emotional connection, to those things. And I think that whenever you put anything out there, how the audience sees it has to, there has to be that connection. I think that's what makes us human, and that's a great thing. People are kind of like, oh, what about AI? AI. So I bring up AI. I shouldn't really bring up AI because I'm a sensitive subject. But what makes us human is the fact that we are not perfect.
Yeah.
And the fact that our synapses don't connect properly all the time, they don't actually. That's what makes things special, and that's what makes things, And I think that and for me, it's always about what I love about this work now is working with people that you kind of go, wow, I didn't think about it that way, or I didn't see it that way, or I didn't see that angle. And when I love working with editors or designers that kind of show you something and you just like, yeah, you looked at this in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And that's so much, that's what I find fascinating. It's like being a kid at school. I don't know whether I think everyone probably has this experience when you're just sitting there at one point in school and you go, I wonder what the hell is going through their mind right now.
Yeah. Well, I understand the part about the AI and the human factor. Yeah, it's like a Persian rug, right? It was like it was stitched imperfectly on purpose, like perfectly imperfect, And in music, it's for me, the AI can never really take that away from us either, because what makes a song special to me, at least in the singer-songwriter world, I like classical and jazz and all kinds of music, but just seeking out singer-songwriter, is the natural space between like the iambic pentameter it's what isn't said. It's like the space in between the words, and the words that are the most convincing are the ones that have like a natural pause, just like in our conversation, when there's something you cannot replicate in a song that just sounds like the artist is literally speaking to you. So that's
no, it's complete. It's complete. It's I mean, the simplistic way is,
yeah, totally.
And you can give any number of songs to any number of people, but there's only certain people that can kind of actually make that song count.
Yeah, totally. How do you go about, because I know you have offices in London, New York, Melbourne, and Amsterdam. So you've now built a global creative agency. How did that growth happen? How did that all take place?
Well, I'd like to say it's strategic, but it's not. It comes again down to meeting people and talking to the people. And so Amsterdam happened was the first one, and that happened because the Dutch film industry realized they didn't really have any trailers editors there. They sent a load over to London, and I gave a talk, and two of them set up a company off the back of that started coding trailers. And I was like, oh, you can freelance for us and you can do bits. And then eventually I was like, well, actually, you're working for us a fair bit. Why don't we set up Intermission Amsterdam? And I love the city. And, we were at a point, we were working with a lot of European filmmakers. It gave us a European foothold. Brexit was about to happen. Doubt I could I could sense it coming. I was hoping it wouldn't, but I could sense it was coming. So we said, and Amsterdam's a really easy city to do business, and in comparison to certain other European cities where there's a lot of red tape. So, and it's also everyone speaks English. If we went to Paris, my French is terrible. If we went to, Berlin, my German, so Amsterdam had, also at that point, Netflix had a lot of work there. They had a base there. There was a lot of other bigger corporations coming in there. So that's kind of how Amsterdam, it's 45 minutes on a plane from London, and it's a great city to visit. So that's how Amsterdam happened. So those two set up Amsterdam, and then we kind of gradually grew that to about 15 people now. Again, mostly working with the European prestige directors and that kind of stuff. Berlin's a busy time, Cannes a busy time, And then how did New York happen? I was working, I had a friend who was working in New York, and he was repping us, and that kind of happened like that. And he was a really good friend who we just chatted film the whole time with. So I was like, let's do so New York kind of happened like that. Melbourne happened because my employee number 2, I think, or 3 said, well, Sam, I'm going to move to Melbourne. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, fine, because his girlfriend was moving there to work on the Australian Open. And he went there. And I was like, that's fine. You can go, I'll probably ask you to do some freelance work, etc. And gradually we ended up working quite a bit together. We built a kind of client base there. And then he kind of came, I don't know, then he came back, and then I met someone else, and I was just like, well, we just might as well set up this office here. I haven't been to the Melbourne office. Because it's just such a long way to travel with kids. I need to go there with a family, and because I love Melbourne's a great city. I had been to Australia, I had been to Melbourne, but I haven't been to the office there. So Amelia joined, and then it kind of grew from servicing, kind of looking after the Australian clients, and there are some great Australian filmmakers, but also as a kind of, it's quite useful as a in time zone wise, just for picking up some. It's almost like they're the elves whilst we sleep, in the same way London can be the elves whilst LA sleeps, or something like that. So so that's kind of, Australia's never going to go that big, but Australians are just a really positive, can-do kind of nation in general, sweeping generalization. But weirdly enough, when you start working as internationally as we do, you kind of realize there are certain stereotypes which actually kind of sometimes fit. So that's how they happen. How you go about it, I would, again, it comes down to meeting the right people and having the right, someone helps you talk. It's talking, isn't it? Everything we do is talking, it's chatting. It's like, you think someone goes, oh, I know a really good accountant that can help you out in New York. I know this, oh, and actually the office we're in is actually from, it's an old creative agency that one of my business advisors used to work with, and therefore he was like, oh, they're moving out because of post-COVID. Right. So we're like, oh, that's great. We can just take over I'm very much for the path of least resistance, apart from when it comes to kind of pushing creative or something like that. But that's why I say, if you meet people that you connect with and get on with, and you have a similar ethos to you, there's no reason why you can't do something in another country. I think that's there's nothing stopping that really in some ways. And the way, whilst we have a lot of people in the office, and I think juniors need to be in the office a lot because the osmosis of the office. And I think that once you get to a certain level, you can pretty much work anywhere. It's not like, you don't need to be in the same city as long as the communication's good.
Yeah.
And that means picking up the phone sometimes, not just Slack and not just email. It can't just be written communication, because when I was at Empire, I looked after the New York office, and I realized very quickly how creative notes can be amplified over distance. Yeah. So if you write a load of notes, or if you give notes back, or you give an email back, it's very different from being in the room with someone where you can kind of you go, that's not working, that's not changes it. And you've got that, that connection, that rapport. Whereas you become almost an extra client if you're just emailing notes and it's a distance and they get amplified and they kind of get read wrong, or they get, and you're like, I didn't quite mean it as you've read it really. The way that I've seen, actually the way that I've said it, I didn't mean it to be as harsh as you might have interpreted it, for example.
I totally get it. Do you think that as a leader, because it sounds like you came up as a copywriter, correct? That was sort of your path. Do you think that plays into your benefit as a leader and with communication and just being an agency owner in general? Do you believe that that's a big?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think it helps that I actually think it helps that I can't use some of the tools in some ways. I think for editors, I started learning editing and then I just didn't have the patience for it. Okay. There's a theme running here. And I think it helps that I can't actually kind of get on the tools and kind of, I've seen people do bad mentoring sometimes when they kind of almost push the junior off and they go, look, do it like this. And you're like, that's not really going to, it's not going to boost their confidence. And it's not really going to teach them much because you've just done it for them. So it's an advantage that I can't, I think that writers by trait will think in a kind of bigger, not in a big, we don't get sucked into the timeline or the design or the, as much. So we have to sit slightly separate. Yeah, I do. Simple. It's also, it's reading a lot, it's watching a lot of plays, it's like watching, all of that kind of stuff. All of that adds to your communication skills, I guess.
Yeah. What are some of like the struggles? I mean, obviously the industry's been changing a lot, especially like in America, especially with the we all went through the writer's strikes and the actors and all that stuff was really, really challenging. I know a lot of agencies kind of led into the UK clients because maybe you guys weren't experiencing exactly that, but how did that all play out?
How did it play out?
I mean, weirdly enough, you guys a lot
grew over COVID during the COVID period, which was always, I still haven't quite worked out why. I think it was just because I had a lot of people, we also worked in a lot early stage in films, and there was a lot of people still developing stuff because there was nothing else to do most in some ways. And actually some of the indies actually did well during COVID because all the studios parked all their releases. So they were like, when anything was just opening up, they kind of were like, right, we're out, we're getting something out there.
Yeah.
I think overall though, it's become a bit it's far more, you really have to it's become harder because we've become bigger, so we're less agile, and we're about 100 people now. So it's harder to kind of, you have to plan a little bit further ahead. Whereas, when you're 30, I always said that people always remind me in the office, they're like, you said you never get bigger than 30. So yeah. Okay. I think that the changes we've seen recently are actually harder than the changes that we experienced during COVID, certainly. I think the market's competitive. I think that there's a lot, there's just a lot of competition. There's a lot more kind of, budgets are reduced, certainly. Whereas I guess actually salaries haven't really reduced, certainly not, in the UK necessarily. I think they have maybe in the US a little bit. And I think the teams are slimmer in the US. I think those days when, you had these big, I used to be shocked about, I'm still shocked by what people get paid in those times because I'm like, it's just a different market completely. But, I don't want to be in that. I mean, we toyed with looking at LA and I was like, look, we've got to be true to what we are, which is, I don't want to be sitting. I've always thought, if everyone's looking that way, let's look the other way. What are we? We are, there's so many people that are great at what they do there. I'm not going to come in and change that. Whereas I can be something which is individual and unique within, we want to be the best outside of LA,
Yeah.
And also dip into all those great creatives that are, international. They are, they're in Amsterdam, they're in London, they're in, even New York has a very small, there's not many people that do what we do in New York.
It's a smaller industry.
So, and I get New York. I'm British. I like walking places. Yeah. I think LA is a very, you either love it. I know people love LA. Some people love LA, and I don't want to sound down about LA, but it's not my kind of city.
Yeah, no, I get it. You got to, we all have our vibes and where we feel.
Vibe is a funny thing. It's an important thing. It's like something which you can never really put a finger on it, but there is you get a gut instinct, don't you, off the top?
Yeah, there definitely is an energy. I grew up when I was young in New Jersey, so I was very used to New York because it was so close, and all my family was there in Vermont. So I sort of resonated a little bit more with LA because it was just there was sun there. It was like sunshine, and it was a little bit more relaxing. But yeah, I mean, I totally can understand, London and then enjoying New York and the energy that brings. I mean, they're all amazing.
Sitting in a freeway sitting in a car is not relaxing.
No, that part isn't fun. Definitely not.
And I'm British. I like to have a pint and be able to walk home, or rather I'll get a cab. So
what's the maybe you can paint a picture a little bit of what the London scene is like. Now you're just sort of describing the have a pint and walking home. I talk to people in London all the time. I'm always interested in hearing about what's going on there. I like the perspective. I like the different types of work you guys are doing. But what I hear from people is that it's a very close-knit scene. Everyone kind of knows each other. You see each other in the pub. It's a very it seems very collaborative and exciting. Am I on to what it's kind of like there, or what's the vibe?
I mean, I think, yeah, you're right.
In the creative agency space, I sort of
creative agencies, but in the film industry in general, you're more likely to bump into people within the film industry in London because it's a city of 12 million condensed into a very small area in comparison to, say, LA or any American city apart from New York. New York's the only other one because of the way but even then you've got the 5 boroughs and it's spread out. So I think that London is unique in that sense, and also you have pockets of it, so Soho in the old days, and I say the old days, I say up to 2015, Soho was the heart of the film industry. You'd bump into people, you'd see people everywhere. It was like big film stars, whatever, you'd see them in Soho. You could say Shoreditch was a bit the same, a bit more music-y maybe, and I grew up, I've always been East, so Hackney and Shoreditch were all kind of musicians and that kind of stuff. I look at my street and I think we've got three rock stars in our kind of on our little green. So it's like that, and I think that there's certain pubs that you go to. It changes. Obviously I'm now. I say old, but I am old. And
you're talking about VHS, so I would definitely.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good game, actually, when you put the VHS, and I used to guess the next line the VO artist was about to say. But when you've kind of got you kind of find pockets, and for me, what is London is, I guess, I'm hoping it's because I'm old, that I worry that it's pricing itself out of the market sometimes, and it prices up. For me, I could live really central on a low rent, on hardly any, the rent was low. I could go out, drink, I could do so much stuff. This is 15 years ago on a pretty shitty wage, and love London and enjoy London. I'm not too sure you can do that anymore. I know that rent is ridiculous. The landlords have pushed it up too high. So for me, London's slightly eating itself in that sense as a creative. And I think it needs to realize how important that creativity is. Let's face it. Estate agents should realize how important artists are, because the artists go to an area, they make it cool, then the estate agents can kind of start developing it. And they should pay a premium for that. They should pay a premium to the artists, or find good spaces, or supplement their rents or something, because, it's funny because now I moved, it's like, I now kind of live between here and between London and the countryside, and a lot of artists couldn't get the studios. Some of the artists that couldn't get studio space no longer in East London are out here. Yeah, it's one of the reasons we're out here, because there is a bit of a creative community, Yeah. So, and I know that cities always reinvent, but it feels we're at a point. And I think every major city is feeling the same. I think New York's feeling the same. I think LA is feeling the same, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens to LA post fires and post what it's been through and how it rebuilds, because I think the way it rebuilds is really important. I think the way that a city reinvents itself is essential.
Yeah.
But I also think that, unfortunately, London actually sucked a lot of, it took a lot of talent to the city. If you want to make it, you had to go to London. Now, I also argue that we should be building other hubs in other places. We got Manchester, we got Leeds, we got, there should be hubs of other Bristol, Birmingham. You've got places where there is creativity, and I think these areas could also be equally built and kind of as a new kind of, what else is interesting coming out there, because it's I think I always say to the junior members of the team, it's not just about going to see films, it's also about going to the best gigs. It's going to see the best, go to the art galleries, you should be, it should be on osmosis of all this culture, which actually affects what you're creating and what you're making. Because if you are just totally tapped into one art form, I don't think you're always going to get the best creative, because it all merges together, and other things spark ideas from elsewhere, and other ideas come from, might come from, an exhibition you've seen, or, to be honest with you, music. So music was a big thing when I was starting Intermission as well. It's like, I love working with composers. I love working with, I love finding bands that, haven't been, aren't used in sync yet. I love all of that. And also when I was in early days, production, sync, music, or library music, as we used to call it, was shit. It's got a lot better now, because actually people can make a living from it more so than being in bands, which is crazy.
I know, right? I know. That's where all the money is, because it's like, streaming is not going to make you very much money. And then if you're going to perform, you've got to sell out a stadium to survive.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. That's the other thing with London, is that, I went to, I used to go to the Astoria. Yeah, Astoria, I saw like Beck play. I saw on Mellow Gold tour. I saw White Stripes play on, their first tour of UK. It was an amazing. I'm not, but we had these beautiful venues that are slowly closing down and slowly being put. And I know there's other ones being put in and stuff like that, but they're not in central London. They'll probably be out a little bit further out. And there's some good ones in Hackney, some good ones in Peckham. There's some, but I still think that there's not as many iconic those kind of venues left.
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, in my experience in LA, I mean, our calculus was when we had kids, we needed more space. We relocated to Vermont. I consider myself a creative person. We moved out to Vermont, which kind of like you described is like East. It's like it's a creative community, but it's a bit smaller and it's a bit more outside in the woods, but it's creative. I guess my internal optimism, I'm hopeful that sort of the state of things and the turmoil and just real like polarization, especially in the US, I'm hopeful that maybe that will create like a renaissance of art and culture, and there's going to be something really cool. I'm hoping for like the next grunge or the next like whatever it is that's going to come. I'm really hoping it's not going to be me creating it, but I'm looking for it.
The best stuff is the stuff that you're not going to fully understand straight away as well. Yeah. It'd be awful if your dad listened to your music and just was like, yeah, I get this straight. This is cool.
Yeah.
You'd be like, no, damn, it's not doing anything. Yeah. So I think there will. I mean, normally what happens is that something has to push. And the only way to push anything is, to challenge the status quo.
Yeah. I totally agree.
As he makes trailers for studios and streamers and whatnot. And isn't it? I have that continual dichotomy of binary thing. I'm pushed this way and that way.
Yeah, I get it. I guess for our last couple minutes, I just wanted to ask, like, outside of this, a creative agency space that you're in, what do you enjoy doing just for your own personal enjoyment? Any hobbies out there? Or
you mean when? Well, the weird thing is, you kind of, I've kind of made a business out of a hobby in some ways. Film was a hobby. And I always think that was a danger, because I realized I was like, you start watching films and start breaking them down. You start kind of like not watching films for when you watch a great film.
Yeah.
When you watch a great film, it takes you away from looking at it any other way. It's brilliant. You're just completely immersed. You're in that world, and just that's a great film. But I still, when I have a chance without kids, music is, theatre, it's art, it's reading. If I get a chance to do any of that, that's amazing.
Any favorite?
I used to play football. But those days have kind of gone with the dodgy knees. I've started getting to tennis because my son's getting really good at it. And I guess also, the being back out in the countryside has been pretty amazing. Kind of my daughter's only 2, so she's not very good at walking at the moment. Well, she is good at walking. She can walk, but she doesn't want to walk that far. But I'm joking. But just kind of being out and about. But I don't get to go to enough gigs, and I don't get to go to enough, theatre. I don't get to go to. But as I was saying, if I can do one, I'm trying to plan it better so I can just do one night here, and I've got to plan. The problem is, it's planning now, rather than the spontaneity of someone going, "Hey, we're going here."
Dude, I'm ending at 10 o'clock because that is when I'm gonna be.
Yeah, exactly. It's planned.
I got a 2-year-old too. She's gonna wake up at if I get home at midnight, she's gonna wake up at 3:30 or 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then
there's no way I'm gonna feel. I don't even need to have a drink, because
then you have the anxiety for that last hour or so. You have that kind of anxiety. You're like, "Good, I'm gonna get about what's anyway."
Exactly.
So yeah, look, I'm incredibly lucky to have a business which I. And in an industry which I love, I enjoy. I can't. I think you always have to. Whenever it gets tough and it gets hard, and you got points when it's like you have to just take yourself to one side and just go, "Come on, this is pretty fun. This is there's people with tough jobs out there, and we do not have that tough a job." Yes, yeah, you might have not cracked that brief. Yes, the client might be a bit not entirely happy yet, or yes, the budget's going skywards, but it's still better than most jobs I could imagine of doing. You always go, "Well, what would your 18-year-old self say?" I think he'd be slightly disappointed in the fact that I haven't directed or made a film yet. And he'd probably say, "I've sold out." But hey, that's the naivety of youth.
And you're still a fairly young fella. You could aren't most filmmakers you don't even.
Yeah, I'm dabbling in that now. We support young and up and coming filmmakers with short films. So we've done about 10 of them, I think. And hopefully some of them will go on to make features, and we can help. And I think, I've got, again, comes down to that weird connection point that you kind of like going sales agents, distributors, producers. So I think that will happen. And it will happen naturally. And it was always the plan to happen naturally. I think it's taken a while to realize what I want to make, or what I would want, because sometimes you're just like, you make a business initially by saying yes to everything. Yeah. And then eventually the skill is to kind of know what to say yes to.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the best way of learning what to say yes to is by getting yourself into certain places where you're like, "Why the hell have I said yes to this?"
True.
Really, I don't know what I'm doing here. But,
no.
But I've said yes. I've committed. So yeah, I do believe in.
Yeah.
I do believe in honoring it and going through. Yeah, and again, it's about meeting those right people that you want to go on that journey. Is an overused word, but you want to hang with, and you want to go on that journey with. It's like that's all that I guess this life is. It's just like finding good people to hang with that you kind of that you want to kind of that have us that can travel with you.
Yeah.
Some people, and then people disappear along the way. And then you find new people, and so yeah. So it's all right. We work hard, but we're still playing.
Man. Well, I really do appreciate your time today and telling us about your story. And I got a few good laughs. I know it's quite late where you are.
I hope that anyone listening, I apologize for my rambling. I also apologize for my intro because I was off on fucking my whole LinkedIn bio probably.
No, this is, this podcast is really just about getting to know the leaders in our industry and letting them have a place to offer value to everybody else in the industry, because people listen to this and they want to know how somebody like yourself started as a copywriter, became a creative agency owner. They want to know that you have other passions outside of just this, and it's very, your story is very relatable, and your insights about, London and I definitely related to our conversation on many levels. So I really do appreciate the time. And I hope we can
hang with you as well. Are they all your guitars?
Those are my guitars. Yeah. They, some of them are my dad's. The coolest one I'll always point out to is that Rickenbacker, which is a very Beatle-esque guitar. And it's from 60, I think it's like 65.
So was your dad?
Yep. My dad's a music teacher. So he taught me, and then I went on to music school. I'm actually a pianist by trade, but I love the guitar just because sometimes in between calls and recruiting, I'll pick it up and I'll strum a little tune or two. And then sometimes I'll even be strumming while I'm on the call, but people don't really know it. I just...
How's your, sorry, I'm going on a tangent now, but because I'm trying to get my son, who's 9, to realize how... I wish, because I hated piano practice.
Yeah.
But I'm always in awe of people who just walk up to a piano and start playing a piano.
Yeah.
Or even a guitar. Actually, he's got an electric guitar because his brother-in-law's an amazing guitarist, but he just never picks it up. And I'm like, just pick it up, just play with it.
Well, one thing when I was a kid, I never wanted to practice or read music. And in fact, it was almost till I was in college before I even really... I went to Berklee College of Music, and I didn't really understand how to read music well until I was even in school. But what I would suggest, if I could go back in time, I think that the new DAWs MIDI program, if you get Logic with a keyboard and you download orchestral, I don't know what type of music he likes or if he's interested in, but you can download orchestral things, or you can download electric guitars or synths or anything you want. I mean, even Logic has built-in stuff. I know that my daughter she just loves pushing the buttons. It's like being a kid, in our age, when you get a Casio keyboard and it has all the different sounds on it and you start pushing them and digging them. For some reason, she's 6 years old. She sits on Logic. She's pushing the space bar. She's putting the tracks down. She's like, and I'm like, this is crazy. So maybe that could be it.
Logic's a good idea, actually. Yeah, Logic's a really good idea because we got the Casio keyboard.
Oh, nice.
I bought that for 20 quid down the charity shop.
Nice.
I got that. But my daughter just presses the demo.
Oh, yeah. I used to like doing that.
Actually, there was a time when Felix used to make us all dance to all the different beats on the Casio keyboard, which was really awkward because, anyway.
I used to love messing around with the demos, and then I'd do a Chopin song, and then I would it would be in the demo, but then you could make the metronome go really, really fast. So you could make it play at an absurd speed that you never could do. And back when I was a performer, I actually used to set my 88 weighted keyboard to do that. And I would start out a show and I would just be playing with one hand, and then I would turn around and it would be playing to the crowd Chopin at warp speed, and they'd be like, what the heck is this guy doing? He's got one hand, he's twisting around and playing Chopin. So I was a one-trick pony, but I found that funny at least.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Well, I won't keep you any longer, but yeah, I do really appreciate the conversation today. And I would love to have you back on the pod. Maybe, maybe in the new year we can have
all good. Yeah. It's been really nice chatting. Yeah. I hope I come across okay once they've edited it brilliantly. I'm joking.
Awesome, Sam. Well, appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.
See you later. Take care. Bye.